Happy day to all. Today we are going to start class 10 biology, chapter 9 heredity and evolution. So first we should know what is a heredity. So the process of transfer of characters or traits from parents to offspring, we call it as a heredity. And the term itself, we all know, variation or change or some difference between the characters or the traits among the individuals of the same species, we call it as variation. So we know, we could see the images here, different types, variations in grapes. You can see the parakeet, even the human boys as well as girls, dogs, and then cabbage leaves and so on. We could see a difference in that. So when we talk about variation, all human beings, they vary in their height. Maybe they might be tall or short or in between the medium. So another example that we could see in our day, in and around it is the earlobe. So the two variations that we could see is free earlobe. So here you can see the free earlobe and then attached earlobe. And why variation is required, or is it necessary? Variation is necessary for evolution, or very less changes from generation after generation will lead to a new species formation, and also which finally results in the evolution process. And better for the survival in a changing environment, these variation is very much essential. So here you can see another variation with the dimple and without dimple, and left-handed as well as right-handed. It varies in color, shape, not a drastic variation, but a slight variation. So next we should see how these variation or accumulating these variation during reproduction takes place. And we know all organisms, they reproduce. In the earlier chapter we have seen the reproduction, where the offsprings that they show minor changes or minor variation, and it can be due to the inaccuracies in DNA copy. So you know, during the process of cell division, first a duplication of DNA take place, and also while they copy, there might be some inaccuracies which lead to small variation, 0.01 percentage of variation from each individual or individual organism in a human beings can be felt. And these variations are less in asexual reproduction and more when they perform sexual reproduction. That too we have learned in the earlier chapter, how do organisms reproduce. And some variations, they are very much relevant or very much useful variation, and they help the organisms to get adjusted with the environment, the changes that takes place in the environment. And some variation do not help the organisms to adjust to the changes in the environment, and they may die and become extinct. And the characteristics or the trait that get transferred through the DNA molecules present in the gene on the chromosome, which are present in the nucleus of the cell. And the inheritance of character or transfer of character from one generation to another is due to the fact that both the paternal as well as the maternal, they contribute equal number of genetic material to the child. And for each trait, These are the two factors, one from the paternal side or the father's side and one from the maternal side or the mother side. So here you can see the two strands. So these two strands of a chromosome, one will be from the paternal and another one will be the maternal side. So now we should know what are this genetic material, and then what makes the character getting transferred from one organism to another. So a gene, which is the unit of the deoxyribonucleic acid or the DNA on a chromosome, is responsible for the transfer of character from the parent to their offspring during the process of reproduction. And we can call a gene as the unit of inheritance or unit of heredity, where the traits are being embedded in the, or the characters are being embedded in these genes, and this get transferred from parents to offspring. And genes, they can control the character in an organism. And when we talk about gene, it can be of two types. One will be expressed and another one will not be expressed. It will be suppressed. So based on the expression or suppression, the genes are of two types, and we call them as a dominant gene and recessive gene, or dominant character and recessive character. A dominant character or a dominant gene which decides the appearance of an organism even in the presence of an alternative gene, because we know we receive gene from both paternal and maternal side, both similar genes, but same traits are being expressed there, but one will be dominant and another one will be a recessive one. When we receive the dominant one, whichever gene is being present, that will get expressed in that generation, and such traits we call it as a dominant traits, or such genes which expresses in that generation, we call it as a dominant gene. And the gene which can decide the appearance of an organism only in the presence of another identical gene, we call it as a recessive gene. It will be present there but will not get expressed. Or when two recessive genes are present, then it shows the expression. So we were talking about the dominant gene. So what are the characteristic features that we need to follow when we follow the hereditary rules? So the first one, it is when we represent a dominant gene, usually the first letter of that character will be written in capital letters. Say for example, when we are taking the height or the tallness as, and it has been expressed in the first generation, we know that tallness will be dominant over the dwarfness. So tallness will be the dominant gene which need to be expressed by, represented by the capital letter T. And the same recessive gene should be represented by the small letter of the dominant trait or the dominant gene, that is will be expressed as a small t. So whenever there is a dominant trait that gets expressed, so the two ways these genes get expressed, we call it as it's a physical appearance as well as the genetic appearance. So when the genotype is the description of gene present in an organism, we call it as a genotype. And when the character or the trait which is visible in an organism or the physical nature of that organism, we call it as its phenotype. So tall or dwarf, it is physical nature. So we can identify they are tall, they are dwarf, but genetically we cannot identify, we cannot recognize by our eyes. So it is internal, where two genes were based on their character will be experienced. So that will be, so genotype will be present inside the chromosome and phenotype will be the physical appearance. And it was Gregor Johann Mendel who proposed this theory, or who started studying the inheritance, and he has been termed as the father of genetics. And he was the first scientist to make a systematic study of pattern in inheritance, which involved the transfer of characters from the parents to the next generation. So for his experiment, Mendel chose pea plants, or its scientific name it is Pisum sativum, and for studying the inheritance. And why he has chosen this Pisum sativum or the pea plant? So it is of these reasons. They can grow easily, first point we can say, and it has got many variants with many traits, that is a tall as well as dwarf plant, green colored seeds as well as yellow colored seeds, round shaped seeds and wrinkled shaped seeds, white colored flower and violet colored flower, and different traits that allowed or that made Mendel to choose a pea plant. And another thing it is, even though they are self-pollinating, they can be cross-pollinated too. So it can be, so experiments can be performed inside the laboratory. And the pea plant, it has got very short lifespan. So in a year, they can get minimum 3 to 4 generations. So the experiment was very fast, and then he could perform those experiments very easily. And these pea plants, there is no restriction to grow these pea plants, or they can grow that in the laboratories too. That is why he has chosen the pea plant or the Pisum sativum as his study material. So when he has performed his experiment with the pea plant, so where the first offspring formed when two parents were crossed together, he termed it as a first generation or F1 generation. And when he selfed this F1 generation, he got the second generation or F2 generation. That is when F1 generation plant were crossed among themselves, selfing, otherwise we can call, to produce offspring. Then the offsprings were called as a F2 generation. So he has chosen tall and short plant. So that is the parent generation. So when these two were crossed, he got the F1 generation, and F1 generation were all tall. So he termed tallness as the dominant trait. Then he self-pollinated, or self-fertilization takes place in the F1 generation, where he got in the second generation or F2 generation, or otherwise F it is termed as a filial, F-I-L-I-A-L, filial generation. First filial generation, which is F1 generation, F2 generation, second filial generation. He got 3 tall plants and 1 short plants. So when he started his experiments, first he has chosen one single character, or one pair of character has been chosen, that was a tall and short plants, and it was because of a single character he has chosen. He termed those experiment as a monohybrid cross, or the cross between a single pair of characters. He termed it as a monohybrid cross. Mono means single, hybrid means that is a two different character of a, that is a different pairs of a character. So he, or Mendel, he has selected pea plant having one pair of character, that is a tall pea plant and then the dwarf pea plant, and he pollinated them. So he obtained only tall plants in his first filial generation or F1 generation. And when he self-pollinated the F1 generation, he obtained tall as well as the dwarf plant in the ratio 3:1. That is F2 generation. So when he identified, that is in the first generation, he got only tall plants. And in the second generation, when he self-fertilized or self-pollinated that F1 generation, he received what? What he has received? He received 4 sets. Out of that, one was a pure tall plant, another one was pure dwarf plant, and 2 were seemed as a hybrid variety. So the trait that was expressed in the F1 generation, he termed or he called it as a dominant trait, and the trait that was suppressed in the F1 generation, he called it as the recessive trait. So next, he moved on to taking 2 contrasting 2 pairs of characters. And what he has chosen, he has chosen seeds of shape and color. Seeds were crossed, and he termed it as a dihybrid cross. So he selected again the pea plants having 2 pairs of characters, which has got the shape as well as the color of the seed. He selected plants having round yellow seeds and wrinkled green seeds, and he cross-pollinated them. And in the first filial generation or F1 generation, he obtained plants with round yellow seeds. So he termed round and yellow as a dominant trait because it was expressed in this was the only character expressed in the F1 generation. And when he selfed that F1 generation, he got 16 plants. 9 had round yellow, and 3 had round green, and 3 had wrinkled yellow, and a single wrinkled green seed. And he initiated the ratio as a 9:3:3:1. So then different scientists, they started working on different traits or the characters to prove how it is being expressed. And the next topic that we need to know is how still many were not knowing how the sex determination of a human being take place. So they feel that it is the females that are responsible for the sex determination of the newborn baby. We will see what it is. So the human beings, we all know that we have 23 pairs of chromosomes in the nucleus of a cell. And out of this, 2 chromosomes, they are sex chromosomes, that is a capital X and capital Y. And the female has 2 chromosomes, that is capital X, capital X. And male has 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. So it is expressed as XY for males, and for females it is a XX chromosome. So the sperms, usually they will have either, so during the process of spermatogenesis is the process of where the formation of sperm takes place, and we have learned earlier it takes place in the testis, where the sperms are being produced by the process called as spermatogenesis. And why during the process of formation of spermatogenesis, where we know the male sex cell will have X and Y. So during the process of meiosis division, haploid cells will be formed to form a sperm. So when a sperm contains X chromosome and the other one will have Y chromosome, so that we will keep it aside. Next, we need to see the female. Female will never have Y chromosome. They will always have XX chromosome. So when the gametes are formed, it will be XX. No way Y coming there. But the males or that is the sperm will denote whether they have X chromosome with them or Y chromosome with them. And when the X chromosome of a mother fuses with the X chromosome of a sperm, we get XX chromosome, which shows the gender as a girl baby. And if a Y chromosome of the sperm fuses with the X chromosome of the mother, then they get XY chromosome, which denotes the baby as a boy baby. So the sex determination is performed by the receiving sperm. So based on, and it is there is father responsibility based on the sperm that the egg receive, the gender of the child is being expressed. So if the fusion takes place between XX chromosome, then the baby will be a male baby, and if, sorry, XX will be female baby, and if it is a Y chromosome getting mixed or fused with the X chromosome of the egg, the baby will be a male baby. Thank you, Joe.